The Boy and the Heron is written and directed by the legendary Japanese animation director Hayao Miyazaki. So The Boy and the Heron is a film that I had the pleasure of watching an early access screening to, and even better so, it was an IMAX. I think this is the first time that I've ever seen any animated film in IMAX, and let me tell you, it's something that you gotta experience. But anyways, Hayao Miyazaki needs no introduction. Everybody is already aware of how wonderful and successful of a filmmaker he is. I mean, just from the collection behind me, you know that I am no stranger to Miyazaki's works. I will say, though, that this is mostly Jen's collection, not mine. I'm just kind of mooching off of her collection to give me a little aesthetic flex in my video. I've seen most of his works. I think there's only 4 films of him that I haven't seen, which are Kiki's Delivery Service, Porco Rosso, Nausicaa, and The Castle in the Sky. They're all films that I hear great things about. I just haven't really got around to them. Although with Kiki's Delivery Service, I've tried watching 2 different times and I keep falling asleep. It's nothing against the film, I promise. I just always watch it late at night when I'm already tired. But I promise to get to it and watch it during the day when I'm nice and awake and give it the proper viewing that it deserves. Princess Mononoke is one of my all-time favorite animated films. I love that film to death. It's just such an adventurous ride from start to finish. And if I had to choose a second personal favorite, honestly, I probably gotta go with Ponyo. I know that's a little bit of a hot take. I understand that Spirited Away, like, objectively is a better film. It just, in terms of, like, its world building and, just the amount of creative effort that was poured into it. I understand that it is objectively a better film. And it used to be my second favorite, but I just think as the years have progressed, I've come to realize that I just find so much enjoyment in Ponyo. There's something about how short, sweet, and simple it is that I just can't get enough of. Just a wholesome, cute, and beautifully animated experience that I just keep coming back to more often. But moving on to The Boy and the Heron, this is a film that I basically knew nothing about going into it. All I knew was that obviously it was written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, and that's about it. I didn't know anything else about it. Coming out of the film, I can say that I really enjoyed this film quite a bit, and I know for a fact that Miyazaki fans are going to absolutely adore this film and find a lot of things to love about it. I mean, to me, this is Miyazaki back to him doing what a lot of people really love him for. Because this is his first film released in, I believe, a decade since The Wind Rises. The Wind Rises was supposed to be like his retirement piece, but he came out of retirement to make The Boy and the Heron, and The Wind Rises is it's such a grounded and like rooted to reality type of autobiographical film, which was something that was, in my opinion, like a huge change of pace for him. So going into The Boy and the Heron, I was unsure if we were going to get something that was more on the realistic side like The Wind Rises, or something that leans more heavily on, his more fantastical elements of filmmaking. And The Boy and the Heron is definitely more in his fantasy appeal side of filmmaking. It's more of something in the vein of Spirited Away. Honestly, this film reminded me a lot of Spirited Away in a lot of different ways, not only in terms of character and story, but also just in how incredibly well imagined this world is. But I will be 100% honest with you guys. It took me quite some time to warm up to this film, and I think it's because the first 20 minutes of this film, at least it feels like the first 20 minutes, again, it was very rooted to reality, something that was like The Wind Rises, something that had a very grounded framework to it, and it led me to believe that this was going to be another one of those films that is more of like a grounded drama, like a grounded coming of age type of drama. But then there's a moment after the first 20 to 25 minutes where it very jarringly pivots into, again, like introducing the more fantasy elements of this film. And I really didn't know how to feel about it. Like to be honest, it kind of took me out, and I wasn't sure if I was going to dig and be immersed into what Miyazaki was trying to present here. But once the film started progressing deeper and deeper into the more fantasy elements of everything, I felt more comfortable with it. I started kind of understanding the goals of this film, started understanding Miyazaki's vision a little bit more, and I felt more immersed into the world and the material that's being presented. And again, I think it was just tough for me to get into it at first because one, like I mentioned, it was a little bit of a jarring pivot, but I also think that there was a part of me that was thinking, okay, this is starting to become more of the same of Miyazaki's works. And I guess I was kind of hoping for something that was a little bit more boundary pushing, out of his comfortable element. But honestly, that's kind of a dickish criticism to give because Miyazaki is in his 80s and he is still somehow being able to craft and create worlds that are this like enormous and just this bold. And I just think for him to take on another ambitious, imaginative project like this, I think is just super commendable and insanely impressive because again, this delivers that imaginative world that you would expect and want out of a Miyazaki film. That's why I said in the beginning, like, I think Miyazaki fans are going to truly adore this film because again, it's everything that you would want out of him. It's got all of these weird and specific little world details. There's a lot of different unique and bizarre creature designs, including the Heron. Which by the way, like, the Heron that's kind of part of the weird fantasy pivot I was talking about. And at first I was like, again, I don't really know about this, but the Heron character really grew on me. I really, really love the Heron character. And again, the creature design of him and what it evolves into, not only substantively within his character, but aesthetically, like what conceptually is going on with his character and his design is so bizarre, but so interesting and unique. Honestly, at first, it's pretty fucking unsettling, but after a while, like, again, you kind of get used to this character and the bond and the dynamic that he shares with the boy in this film, I think, is really compelling and touching at times. And I just like the growth. I like how Miyazaki took his time to kind of allow these characters to grow with each other because it just makes it feel that much more substantive and compelling by the end of it. And also there's this new character concept that this film presents of these little marshmallow looking creatures called the Wara Wara. And they're just like some of the most adorable little things I've ever seen. And again, I think this is something that is going to please a lot of Miyazaki fans because, in Spirited Away, you have those little, like, I forgot exactly what they're called, but those little, like, charcoal things. And then you have, like in Princess Mononoke, the forest sprites, those little cute but kind of unsettling little things that wandered in the forest. And then here you have the Wara Wara. So it's delivering a lot of that stuff that you would want out of a Miyazaki film. And personally, I just found a lot of enjoyment in it. Again, I think what I'm just trying to express to everybody is that the world building is spectacular as to be expected from Miyazaki's works. I mean, it's all here. And again, to see him come out of retirement, 10 years later and still just like bring everything that people loves about him and to give everybody just more characters, another huge story, and just build, again, a whole layer of lore to his legacy, I think it's super impressive and I just love it so much. I'm so happy for him, honestly. But honestly, I think my favorite element of this film is the fact that there are some sequences that are so cinematically stunning. There's like 2 or 3 scenes in this film that are just beautifully presented. I think my favorite sequence in this film occurs in this place called The Delivery Room. And that scene was just, again, I'm not going to spoil exactly like what goes on in the scene, but in terms of flow and in terms of animation presentation and just cinematic presentation, like, it's just so fucking beautiful and so immersive. And again, it's presented in this very dramatic and visually beautiful way that it was just really, really easy to get immersed in and appreciate. And obviously the original score to this film is beautiful and is just classic Miyazaki. There's a lot of just really beautiful sounding piano, like just traditional sounding piano. And there's other scenes that contain orchestrations of stringed instruments and piano that honestly were probably my favorite elements of the score. It just felt so powerful and grandiose. And again, just really helped suck me into this film's environment and also helped invest me emotionally into the material overall. The film also has some scenes that go pretty damn far with its depiction of blood and violence, which in one way was surprising, but in another way it wasn't, because in films like Princess Mononoke, it goes pretty far into that element as well. But, I mean, also here with this film, I mean, there's a scene where a character just gushing waterfalls of blood out of his head. There's a scene where a giant fish is just being carved from top to bottom. So personally, I thought it was really awesome to see Miyazaki return to form to something like Princess Mononoke, to where he's not necessarily concerned with appealing to toddlers or little kids. This is a film that, just from my experience with it, seems like something that is geared more towards teenagers and adults, not only because of its depictions of violence or anything, and that's part of it, but it's also just because of the maturity surrounding the subject matter. Because ultimately this film is about a boy who is struggling to come to terms with the fact that the world around him is moving so fast after the death of his mother. I think the point and the messages of this film revolve around the boy in terms of him desperately wanting to understand why things happen and discovering how time and space interact with each other. And again, just kind of wanting answers as to why the world is continuing to move regardless of this tragic event that happened to him. And just to give one last nitpicky type criticism with this film, which I'm sure people are like rolling their eyes about, but this is a problem that I've had with not just Miyazaki's works, but just Japanese animation in general, is I think there is a little too much on the nose, spoon-feedy type dialogue. In some ways, I can excuse it because I understand why it's there, because it's part of it's a crucial part of the world building element of this film. But then there's plenty of other times where I do feel like Miyazaki's kind of treating me like an idiot, to where we like just visually saw something occur and it's really easy to infer what's going on, but then characters will just outright say what's going on. And that type of thing happens like periodically throughout the film. And that's always just been a pet peeve of mine when it comes to filmmaking in general. So it's not really a huge deal because I kind of expected that a bit going into it. But obviously, I still very much enjoy the experience that this film gave me. It was an absolute pleasure to see one of Miyazaki's works, not only on the big screen, but in IMAX, which is pretty much the best way you could experience a film besides
35mm.
So I'm going to give The Boy and the Heron a soft 8 out of 10. To be honest, I was kind of struggling with the strong 7 and a soft 8 for a while. But I am pretty much certain that on rewatch, the kind of pivot to the fantasy element won't really bother me that much, because I'm just aware of what this film is trying to do now. And it's also just impossible to give so much admiration to what Miyazaki was able to accomplish with this film, especially at the age that he's currently in. I think that it's honestly like kind of unbelievable when you think about it. But anyways, that's all I got to say about The Boy and the Heron. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, just give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.